Hey, I'm Gladius. Welcome to my complete Jingliu guide. Jingliu is the best damage dealer ever made.
This is the most powerful, fastest
DPS
we've ever made.
This is beyond a doubt the most beautiful things we've ever made.
It's the best
damage dealer
that we have ever created. This is
the new destruction DPS.
It is the biggest leap forward since the original
version.
In this video, we'll go over her kit, exactly how to optimize her build with the right Lightcones and Relics, and find the best teammates for her. And in the end, I'll be able to convince you that she is indeed at the pinnacle of dealing damage. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Jingliu tops the damage meter to both enemies and her own teammates. If that doesn't scream Path of Destruction, I don't know what does. Jingliu is very skill point efficient and specializes in dishing out massive damage at the cost of damaging her own teammates. Her basic attack does not contribute to her main methodology of dealing damage in any way and should be avoided if possible. Now, Jingliu's talent is an enhanced state of combat that gives her 50% crit rate and roughly 2000 attack. This enhanced state of combat is called the Spectral Transmigration state. From now on, I will refer to this as Special State. And every attack she does in this state, including her ultimate, drains 4% of all her allies' max HP. This enhanced combat is where all her power lies, increasing her damage by 3 to 4 folds. To enter the special state, Jingliu needs to gain 2 stacks of something called syzygy. She'll also have her action advanced by 100% when this happens, granting a free turn. If she consumes all her syzygy stacks, she will exit this enhanced combat state and return to normal. And in order to re-enter this special state, she'll need to regain 2 stacks of syzygy. Jingliu has 2 versions of a skill. The normal one consumes a skill point as per usual and grants her 1 syzygy stack. And when she is in her special state, this skill becomes enhanced into a much stronger 3-target blast. While this enhanced skill does not consume skill points anymore, it does consume her allies' HP and 1 syzygy stack. Her ultimate is a similar 3-target blast ability that does even more damage than the enhanced skill. And more importantly, it grants a syzygy stack instead of consuming one, even when used during her special state. This is also the only method of gaining syzygy stack inside her burst window to prolong her special state. With her damage output being 3 to 4 times greater in her enhanced combat state, you might be worried that she spends too much time dealing underwhelming damage while ramping up into her special state. But that is very far from the truth. You see, while yes, she will want to use 2 normal skills to gain 2 syzygy stacks, allowing only 2 uses of her enhanced skill thereafter, but you have to take into consideration that she gets a free action advance when she first enters her special state, immediately casting an enhanced skill afterwards. So realistically, Jingliu only spends 1 of her actions to preemptively ramp herself up into her special state. And then you ideally want to cast her ultimate within this window of enhanced state, doing almost triple the damage than if not, at the same time prolonging Jingliu's special state for 1 extra action. So in reality, if you take the free action advance and ultimate into consideration, only 1 out of 4 turns are used to ramp herself up into the special state, thus making Jingliu's damage output way more consistent than it might appear at a first glance. And this isn't even taking consideration that her technique gives her a free syzygy stack when entering battle, enabling Jingliu to burst right off the bat, not even needing 1 turn to ramp up. Before we dive in specifically how to build Jingliu, we have to understand how her damage composition will look like in the most common settings. Here are the basics. 90% of her damage output lies within her special state of combat. In totality, 75% of her damage belongs to her skill, and 25% belongs to the ultimate. Given how damage formula works, we have to analyze where we can assist Jingliu in achieving the best exponential results, while avoiding diminishing returns. With an extra 2000 attack from her talent, we already know Jingliu is set on attack percent. Any extra will be hit hard by diminishing returns. Normally, crit ratio is the most desirable stat for almost all DPS, but for Jingliu, who gets a free 50% crit rate from her talent, it's very likely that even crit damage can be hit by diminishing returns at high investment. Nowhere near as severe as attack percent though. Now let's talk about her weaknesses, the bonus damage or ice damage. Since she doesn't have any ice damage traces, she relies solely on ice damage orb and Rutilant Arena set bonus, which is very poor. Being as skill point efficient as she is, it's a no-brainer that Bronya can be fully utilized with Jingliu, giving her the much needed extra actions and damage bonus. For vulnerability, we have two options, one being Silverwolf's Lightcone, the other one being Welt, neither of which is a huge contributor, so we won't focus on this one. For resistance lowering, we have Silverwolf and Pella at E4. If enemy is already weak to ice, neither of which has a significant impact for the skill point that it consumes, especially when you're running a Bronya eating up all the skill points. But if you're not running Bronya, sure, why not? At last, we have Defense Shred. Luckily, we have Pella and Silverwolf for this and provides a huge boost to Jingliu's damage output. Defense Shred is the final element we have at our disposal to reliably push Jingliu's damage to its limits. Let's talk about main stats and substats. For body piece, most likely you'll be looking for crit damage, as she gets so much free crit rate from her talent. Crit rate body piece works as well if you can manage to stay under the 100% crit rate cap. For Jingliu, attack percent body piece is not very competitive. Boots, you certainly want speed. With speed boots, you only need 2 speed substats to go over the golden 134 speed breakpoint to optimize Jingliu in Memory of Chaos. Also, it makes it easier to tune Bronya speed to be slightly lower than Jingliu while staying above 134 speed. For Sphere, absolutely nothing can be argued against using an ice damage sphere. This is the single greatest boost to Jingliu from all her relics. This is the only one non-negotiable option. Even if you have 0 useful substats on the ice sphere, you would still have to use it. For Rope, in most content and scenario, attack percent is the way to go, not energy regeneration. Because of the way you slot in Jingliu's ultimate inside her window of special state, extra energy regeneration is not required to sustain this. Energy regeneration rope can only have good value when you can change her rotation in a way to cast 2 ultimates instead of 1. The only way that's possible right now is fighting really easy content where Jingliu is consistently getting multiple kills every single turn. And now for substats, please refer to this chart for DPS performance. This is assuming you already reached the 134 speed threshold, because if not, speed gets an even higher priority. In general, the priority will be crit over speed over attack percent. It's also not a terrible idea to build Jingliu more holistically and consider the defensive stats as well. She will be targeted more than usual being a destruction unit. Effect resist is also great, stacking with her passive traits of 35% effect resist additively, which is exactly what you want for these type of resistance bonuses. Next, let's talk about Lightcones. If you aren't going for Jingliu's signature Lightcone, there will be many free-to-play options that are surprisingly close to each other. I will list only the best and popular options there are, with the 4-star option being S5. I know not everyone's gonna have them at S5, but for comparison's sake, it's nice to know how they'll compare in their final form. While the Herdershop Lightcone at S5 is still the best free-to-play option, but it no longer holds a dominant position as it did for someone like Imbiber Lunay. It mainly provides attack percent bonus, which unfortunately is diminished, but the damage bonus is still very nice nonetheless. Secret Vow has the advantage of providing a good portion of unconditional damage bonus, which is very valuable given the lackluster damage bonus Jingliu inherently has. Clara's Lightcone, something irreplaceable, is quite decent as well, with the added bonus of being a 5-star Lightcone, meaning higher defense and HP. If Jingliu is played as a Hypercarry destruction unit, the trigger condition for killing enemies will have a very good consistency as well. Under the Blue Sky is also a great choice, providing even more crit rate with a very consistent trigger condition and uptime. The only tricky part is tuning your crit rate to not go over 100% considering this bonus. I won't go over other character signature Lightcone too much. They're mainly okay stat sticks with good defense and HP, being 5-star Lightcones and all, but they don't really provide more damage over the 4-star Lightcones at S5. Any 3-star Lightcone should be avoided for a main DPS character. The base attack, defense, and HP are just too low for comfort. And finally, I'll talk about Jingliu's signature Lightcone, I Shall Be My Own Sword. This Lightcone has superb performance, making up for Jingliu's lackluster damage bonus, working perfectly with her team-wide HP consumption mechanic, bolstering every single attack she makes during her enhanced state, with an added bonus of defense shred to further capitalize the fact that she is optimally played with either Silverwolf or Pella. This is one of the best DPS Lightcones I've done calcs for, being quite ahead of his competition by avoiding diminishing returns and overcoming Jingliu's weakness of having less damage bonus from her kit. Let's talk about what relic sets we want for Jingliu. For planner set, the Rutland Arena is miles ahead of the other options. You should make it a priority to obtain this set with an ice damage bonus sphere. There will be no exception to this rule. But on the bright side, the Lieutenant Arena set is almost no barrier of entry like it has when used on other characters. Reaching 70% crit rate is a joke for Jingliu. With her getting 50% crit rate for free, you only need to find extra 7% crit rate from other sources. Now with the obvious out of the way, let's discuss the 4-piece Relic set, which has way more options and nuances. First, the crowd favorite 4-piece Ice set. Assuming perfect play and uptime, this set increases Jingliu's damage by 9.5%, but taking into consideration the rotation variations, potentially losing a stack of her buff, it averages out to be slightly less at 8.7%. The 2-piece combination of either Ice, attack percent, and speed sets are all viable as well, with Ice and speed edging out slightly. Now, finally, let's talk about my favorite, yet controversial Relic set, the Quantum set. Remember when I said her missing element to further push her to the limit is Defense Shred? Also, the fact that Defense Shred in nature does not have diminishing returns, better yet, have increasing returns instead, so long as you don't go above the 100% defense reduction cap. The more you stack this, the better it gets. So as a baseline with Pella on the team, even if the enemy is not quantum weak, a 10% unconditional defense shred will increase Jingliu's damage by 7.9%. If you consider her having her light cone on top of that, the increase now becomes 8.7%. Now, of course, we're not going to assume the enemy is always weak to quantum for the full benefit, but we're also not going to discount the fact that they might be. So let's be fair and look at it statistically. There are 106 enemies at the moment, 42 of which are weak to quantum, roughly 40%, which is very in line with the expectations of enemies typically having 3 weaknesses. So in reality, expected increase is bumped to 12.8%. With the absolute ceiling being 19.1% if you were to guarantee this somehow with Silverwolf. But that's too conditional, I'm just gonna settle with the average of 12.8%. With all that being said, while the Quantum set is my favorite, but all the other options are still quite good and there's no need to refarm good relics you already have. Just a couple of substats are enough to offset any differences. Prioritize having the correct main stats and good amount of substats on your relics. Real quick, I'll go over the trace priorities. Jingliu has a fairly balanced kit. You pretty much want to level up everything except for her basic attack. Given that you leveled up all the cheap ones, this chart shows a more priority when it becomes expensive at around level 8. It shows the performance she gains per 1 level up of the trace. The general priority will be leveling her skill over the talent, over crit damage and speed traces, and finally the ultimate. There will be no need leveling her basic attack. If you somehow end up using her basic attack, it probably means you messed up the rotation somewhere. Well, let's talk about Jingliu's Eidolons. They're quite interesting. We don't have an Eidolon that stands out to be too significant, but she also doesn't have the typical 1 or 2 Eidolons that are completely useless either. So the end result is that there is no clear stopping point when polling for her Eidolons. And at E6, she still manages to accumulate 86% increase in her damage, which is very on par with damage dealers at E6. Eidolon 1 is pretty good, but do not be misguided by the wording. It does not do 100% of the original adjacent damage twice, resulting in double damage, but rather just an extra 100% motion value to the main target. This will nonetheless greatly increase her single target damage by about 37%, but it comes at a very poor trigger condition requiring only 1 target. In the current state of the game, this is actually very rare, with an uptime of under 15%. I'll say the other notable Eidolon is her E6, extending her enhanced combat state even longer, making it possible to even cast 2 ultimates in 1 rotation. This will be the only time I'll consider using an energy regeneration rope over an attack percent. Finally, I will talk about team building. Team building for Jingliu can be flexible and inflexible at the same time. There's 2 ways of building a Jingliu team. The first one is to have Jingliu as the Hypercarry. This is the inflexible one, but also the one with the highest ceiling. The 4-team slot is pretty much set in stone, with Bronya being the perfect partner, completely doubling Jingliu's action by tuning her speed to be slightly lower than Jingliu. Bronya completely takes advantage of how skill point efficient Jingliu is and spends all those skill points, all the while giving Jingliu the much needed damage bonus that she lacks. This is a match made in heaven. Both Jingliu and Bronya will reach the height of their careers. The rate of HP consumption of the whole team also reached the peak of 16% max HP per 2 turns instead of 4. But worry not, Alocha will be there to keep everyone alive while generating skill points in tandem with our favorite support, Pela. Okay, I know this is a very specific team build. Not everyone is going to have Bronya, let alone Bronya and Locha, but as a hypercarry Jingliu, this setup is at the pinnacle of her career, or any other team comp at the moment. For the cost of damaging her own teammate, the output is 30% more than the next best hypercarry competitor in Byra Lune with a similar team build. Alright, so let's talk about a more relatable hypercarry setup that is still great for Jingliu. For Harmony, you can opt to have Asta or Tingyun. You still want a defense shredder like Pela or Silverwolf, and finally, the sustain slot will be quite flexible. But note, due to the nature of Jingliu's action advance, and entering her special state will expend buffs very quickly, when you do use buffs like Japard or Tingyun's ultimate, try to time it after Jingliu enters her special state to maximize the uptime for those buffs. The reason why I said Jingliu can be flexible in team building is because she doesn't need to be played as a hypercarry, and instead be paired with another DPS that is also skill point efficient like she is. At the moment, the best DPS to pair her with is Blade, who gets extra value proccing his talent from Jingliu's HP consumption. But in all honesty, she actually has way more options. So bring a DPS that actually match enemy weakness as a priority when pairing them with Jingliu. On that note, if enemies are Ice or Quantum weak, a Mono Quantum or Dual Quantum and Ice team can have immense potential as well. And considering the fact that in the future we might be getting Ice or Quantum Harmony supports, this gets me even more excited for its potential. Alright, I know that was a lot to sit through, but Jingliu is a character I've been waiting a long time to cover. I've been working on it for a very long time to compile everything in one video. I read every single comment. Ask me if you still have any questions. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you're into these type of videos, of course. My name is Gladius. Thank you for watching. Until next time.